So today I'm standing in an area that once had the original mill race, which ran through downtown Battle Creek, connecting the Battle Creek and Kalamazoo rivers. Sands McCamly built a canal. So let's explore some of that history. Sands McCamly building the canal, which would become the mill race, was the single most significant launch to industry and the founding of the city that we know today as Battle Creek. But to better understand how Sands McCamly, a pioneer, came to arrive into this area and discover this territory and the opportunities that it held, we must first venture back into some early Michigan history. After Ohio was made a state in 1802, the territory that we know as Michigan was part of the territory of Indiana, with William Henry Harrison as governor, who later became president of the United States. In 1805, the territory of Michigan was created and set apart from Indiana, with General William Hull of Massachusetts as the first territorial governor. There was little gain in population or enterprise or development in the early years of that last century. In the entire territory of Michigan down to 1812, it is estimated that there was not more than 5,000 people in the entire territory, with Detroit, which was a city that had been over 111 years old at that time, contained only 800 Europeans. Several things contributed to this slow growth. It had been originally settled by the French and not the English, and had drawn its life from French rather than English sources. After the American Revolution, conditions remained practically the same, with British garrisons holding the forts on American soil along the frontier, with a wide expanse of unbroken forest lying between the settlements of the Americans to the south and southeast and the fringe of the French settlements along the border of the north and northwest. There were no roads worthy at the time and no boats carrying capacity of any kind on the lakes. So as a result, the country known as the Territory of Michigan remained for years practically at a standstill. There are two main events in history that contributed to changing all of that. The first being the War of 1812 and its conclusion with the Treaty of Ghent, which resulted in the withdrawal of the British from American soil, and the second being the establishment and creation of the Erie Canal between 1817 and 1825, which increased the possibility of travel from New York to the Great Lakes and across the Great Lakes to Michigan. So these two events, the conclusion of the War of 1812 and 1814, and the establishment and opening of the Erie Canal in 1825, could be considered the impetus for pioneer expansion and settlements in the territory of Michigan. In 1831, a survey of the lower counties was completed in Michigan, and land was offered at $1.25 an acre. This sparked a pioneer movement, and among those early land investors that came with that movement was Sands McCamly in that same year of 1831. He was a veteran of the War of 1812, having served as a private in William Goldsworth Belknap's 1st Regiment. He was the son of David McCamly Jr. and Phoebe Sands. David McCamly Jr. had served as a colonel in the Revolutionary War. Sands McCamly, at the age of 30 in 1823, he married Eliza Coleman. And at this point, several years after the war, driven by a pioneer spirit, he set his sights on Michigan, ultimately arriving in the area that we now know as Battle Creek in June of 1831. Seeing the potential of the area with the two rivers, he envisioned creating a channel at that time with a mill race to facilitate the speed of water and establish an industrial community. Wasting no time, he immediately went to the land office in White Pigeon to buy the tract of land, but found that other men were trying to stake the same claims. After a long discussion with the other claimants, Jonathan Guernsey and Daniel Guernsey, it was agreed that Jonathan Guernsey would acquire the 837 acres and buy it in his name. Daniel Guernsey and Mr. McCamly were each to buy a third,
when the three men were to meet again in Detroit in October. When October came, much to the chagrin of the men, their wives refused to keep house in such a wilderness, so the deal was never completed as planned. Jonathan Guernsey sold one half of the 837-acre parcel known as the Guernsey Purchase to two relatives, Ezekiel Guernsey and Phineas Sackett, and he sold the other half to a man by the name of Nathaniel Barney. In March of 1834, being out of the deal at that point, Sands McCamly moved his family to the Nottawa Prairie near Athens, which they stayed there 2 years, and then eventually moved to Marshall for 2 more years. In March of 1834, Sands McCamly purchased the one-half tract of the Guernsey Purchase from Ezekiel Guernsey and Phineas Sackett, which included the confluences of the two rivers. In 1835, Nathaniel Barney sold his half of the Guernsey Purchase to Ezra Convis, another industrial pioneer, who would eventually sell his interests in the Guernsey Purchase to 3 brothers, Abraham, Isaac, Joseph Merritt, and to another man named Jonathan Hart. Ezra Convis would go on to establish the village of Verona, as well as being involved in the establishment of the village of Augusta. And to find out more about his story, watch my video, The Rise and Fall of Verona. Together in 1836, Sands McCamly, with Jonathan Hart and the Merritt brothers, would establish the first plat of the village of Battle Creek. Following his acquisition of his portion of the Guernsey Purchase in 1834, the original foresight for this industrial development, which would become the city of Battle Creek, rested in the imagination of Sands McCamly. Water power was essential to industry before the advent of steam, gas, and electricity. So it was McCamly's money and brains that created the first canal for powering machines. In 1835, he took advantage of a natural fall of 2 feet between the Kalamazoo and Battle Creek rivers. By constructing a flume north from the territorial road crossing along the east bank of the Kalamazoo River, he diverted enough water to increase the fall of water in his mill race to 6 feet. Now, some historians state that McCamly imported Irish labor, 25 to 35 men, to build the first mill race. How they were housed and where they were housed in 1835 when this canal was being built is somewhat of a mystery and remains a question to this day, because this was complete wilderness at this time, except for a few cabins in the beginnings of a small village. There is an indication that he hired as many local young men as were available. Victory Collier, not yet of voting age, is said to have made wooden wheelbarrows for the canal diggers. The only tools were pickaxe, shovel, and wheelbarrow. The power was human brawn. Actually, little is positively known as to how the job was accomplished, but finished it was. Water ran through the canal in November of 1835. McCamly also had a sawmill built near the Battle Creek River, and it was the first mill to use the water power. A man named Benjamin Wright assembled the machinery. Within a few years, a dam closer to town was constructed under the supervision of General Cholette Cady. This formed a mill pond that assured less power waste. The strength of the current in the mill race was doubled, and the canal given sturdy stone walls that are still preserved and can be seen beneath the Battle Creek Gas Company office. According to Bernice Bryant Lowe in Tales of Battle Creek, this building is now used and operated by Ermish Travel. At the height of the usefulness, the canal supplied power to 18 mills in the downtown Battle Creek area. Here is a sketch of the downtown district in 1857, which shows what the platting of the mills, the canal, and the mill race looked like, and how the mill race was channeled between the two rivers and an additional canal to parallel one of the rivers, adding more room for mills. Mills were not exclusive to only the mill race district. As the community drew more pioneers to the area, mills were established along other waterways in the area. There were 2 built in Verona on the Battle Creek River. Others were built on Mingus Creek, Harper Creek, and even over in Bedford during the years that followed. There were even the remains of a mill found at St. Mary's Lake. The first prerequisite to establishing a milling community during the 1830s is having a water source, and the first mills that were established were the lumber mills, from which all other mills could be built. Following the lumber mills, there were planing mills, grist mills, woolen mills, and even a cider mill established in the region. The milling industry changed over the years with the introduction of steam, gas, and electricity as power sources, but the early years of the industrial development of the downtown area of Battle Creek and the surrounding communities were hinged upon the creation of the original canal built under the guidance of Sands McCamly. Sands McCamly experienced and suffered many hardships settling in Michigan. He survived a fall in a stream during a 19-degree below zero winter and a cholera epidemic which attacked his baby son and his wife. From the fall in the frozen stream, he suffered problems with his feet for years. Mr. McCamly never gave up the dream of building a great city. He was a businessman and for years operated a general store. He was also an attorney. He established the first bank with fellow pioneer Tolman Hall. And the year that Michigan became a state, he was elected as a state senator. In later years, as the town grew, he instituted McCamly Park, originally called West End Park, because he felt every town should have its own town square. McCamly Park over the years certainly changed, and it looks considerably different today, but it remains today as one of his endearing legacies as one of the key founders of the Battle Creek community. Sands McCamly died at the age of 94 in 1864. It is difficult to summarize the life of a man such as Sands McCamly. He was a pioneer visionary who inspired others to build upon his dream of a city in the wilderness. In the many decades that followed, expanding on that initial spark of industry, many great companies were born in Battle Creek. The Advanced Thresher Company, the American Steam Pump Company, Post Cereals, and the Kellogg Company. Even the formation of the sanitarium was due to the existence of the industrial town that McCamly had inspired to be created. So it's certainly something to think about the next time you visit downtown Battle Creek. When you do, you will find a monument to the rich milling history, complete with a fountain, right where the mill race used to pass through the downtown district, at a place called Millrace Park.
So that's going to do it for today's tour through downtown Battle Creek and the history of some of the milling industry and Sands McCamly's Canal, which connected the Battle Creek and Kalamazoo rivers, which started a whole industrial growth of the community. If you like today's video, please take a minute to like, leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with others. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.